All right. Good morning. Welcome to another session at the Digital Container Summit. My name is Alexa. I'm the marketing manager here at Container Exchange. And today I'll be moderating this session, mapping out big data and its impact on exponential improvement in sales, which will be presented by Marc Moss, the global head of sales at Nippon Express. Marc has been in sales for over 30 years, and within logistics, he started with UPS, followed by TNT, DHL, Agility, Geodis, and now at Nippon Express. Today, his keynote is concerned with his passion for sales. He is here to share his unique perspective that he has developed in the science of driving business, numbers, people, internal levers, and of course, data to manage results. By the way, outside of work, he's a keen cyclist and he lives and works in Singapore. So over to you, Marc.
Hi, Alexa. Thank you very much for the invitation today. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are. One of the things that I always get asked as generally a head of sales on a business transformation is how effective is the sales team, right? And often we look at, do we have the best people in that team? And think of it a little bit like a football team. Do we need to go on the transfer market? Do we need to buy new people? Do we need to get better? Well, the question I always have to ask when looking at any sales team is how effective is the company in managing sales? How effective is the company in managing data, pricing, and everything else? So I'm going to walk through and show you really how we address that, or I address that when I go into a company. So the first thing is, I'm sure a lot of you would have heard some of these things. When you look at saying, well, our sales is X today, we need to overachieve, we need to do more. We always get the excuses, and I call them excuses from the teams, but we sometimes have poor success rates, or too expensive, or we don't have enough product support, or we haven't developed this, or our competitors are doing something else. Well, the first things we need to sort of understand is, well, if this is the case, how do we prove it, right? How do we know that some of these challenges are actually going in place? Do we know if we're buying correctly, right? Do we know if we're setting the market price at the right level? If our customers tell us we're too expensive, do we know if they're telling the truth? And what about our operations when they tell us that this is our cost, or our product team say that's our cost? Again, how do we know? So one of the things that we have to be able to do is, in order to be able to sell, we need to be able to sort of prove or validate the data that we have. And I think I just saw a part of the presentation earlier from Wolfgang, and I thought I quite liked a quote he said. He said, "What visibility on what is relevant." Well, that's one of the core things. What is relevant when we look at data? Well, there is a huge amount of data and within freight forwarding. And I'm really talking about the freight forwarding side, not the tech side. And how do we use some of this data to make us more effective? Because salespeople need to be out seeing customers. And they need to be able to generating opportunities, and they need to be generating those opportunities into sales. And they have a ratio, but there's a huge amount of data that's sort of coming out that, we need to be able to report on what's the success rate for the round 1 and round 2 final offers, how many calls have the salespeople done, how many effective calls. If you look at the operations, we look at all sort of data to manage our business. But again, I'm using that word from Wolfgang's speech, what is relevant, right? With so many reports here, there's a mass of it. How do we actually work out what can we use? And let's look at really, from a sales perspective, what we're really looking for is outputs, right? We want more long-term sustainable growth or profitable growth. And quite often, we just want to keep it simple. We want to do more with less, right? So always the challenge is return on cost. So what we need to be able to look at then is how do we get some of this data, because some of it in silos works extremely well for parts of the business, but how do we look at all of that data, pull it together, and then use it in a sales way? So I'm going to now look at how we can apply that in a commercial environment. Okay, so again, going back to the questions, how good is your sales team, the CRM systems, all these different areas? Well, there's one really clear thing. It's the first thing we need to know is how successful are we and what are our ratios today, right? Because as an example, if you've got a 1 in 2 success rate and you need to generate $1 million of sales, you need an effective pipeline of $2 million. But if you've got a 1 in 50 rate and you need $1 million worth of sales, you need a $50 million pipeline, right? So it's all relevant. Or you've got a 1 in 10 ratio, you need a $10 million pipeline, and that generates how many salespeople you need, how much marketing activity we need, and how do we do that? So what we need to look at then is, let's establish some baseline of where we are today. So what is our success rate? And the bottom line is, actually, any sales team is your results are the results today, right? So it's very important to get that stake in the sand of where we are. And then once we've managed to establish, looking at all those different metrics, is to say, right, how do we start that improvement process? Well, 3 core concepts for me is looking at all those data analytic reports that we can pull, is I'm really after 3 core ingredients, okay? And when we look at this, the results are the results. Well, if you had the best sales team, would you be able to sell more, right? If you had the best product and procurement teams, would you be able to buy better? If you had the best data analytics, what can you actually do with it? Well, one of the things that I'd like to look at is these 3 core concepts. First of all, knowing your selling price, knowing the market price, and knowing the cost price. And it reminds me of a Sun Tzu quote many years ago saying, and the summary of it is, if you know yourself but not your enemy, then you need not fear. Sorry, if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you need not fear the result of 1,000 battles. Meaning, if you know what the market price is for something, is one thing. That's what is a customer prepared to pay. If you know what you're actually buying at, that's helpful. But you also then need to know what the selling rate is going to be, right? So in other words, if you go to a product team, ask them for your pricing, the selling price doesn't necessarily reflect what the cost price is or the market price, okay? So if we're selling too high, we're not going to win. If our cost price is too high, then we're not, even if we're putting margin on top of that, we're still not perhaps going to be able to get to market price. So those 3 factors give you the most intelligent view that we can get onto the market, okay? But the whole point is, how do we utilize knowing these 3 core areas to help us produce better results? So what we've then done is we've looked at the core drivers of data. So selling prices and market prices, well, we can get that from sales teams, RFQ data, feedback from customers, rates, and our CRM tools, which allow us to sort of pull in and see what's actually happening. The cost and market price as well, product and procurement from buying data, selling rates, and then internal databases that we can build. And this is what we've been doing to generate, looking at our, previous RFQ data, volume stats, billing data, trade lane statistics. And then importantly, looking at that to build a database, what we've then done is created sort of an extra pocket, which is market data, where in this case, it's not a shameful plug for Zaneta, who are presenting later, but what we wanted to be able to do is, how do we validate all of our internal costs with what's going on in the market, right? How do we prove that, if we say our cost is $1, how do we validate that the market price or is more than $1 or around $1? And that's a really key aspect for us, because that level of intelligence has really helped us then see exactly where we are in the market and help utilize those data. Then the next point is AI, of course, artificial intelligence, and HI. What is HI? Human intelligence for me. And I'm sure we can talk about augmented intelligence or whatever, but I honestly believe that with all the analytical data that we get, we can sort of look at this, but without our ability and our experience to be able to interpret that into the right way, we can't always apply that necessarily in what we're doing day to day. So for me, really what I'm trying to look at doing is validate that my selling price is able to be sold at a profit, ensure that the market price is close to where I'm selling, right? And number three is our cost price, making sure that our cost price is competitive enough to allow us to sell at market price, okay? And if we can do that, then we know we're relevant, and then we know we can do this. So how does that all turn around into, you know, producing this from a sales team, right? Because the core thing is looking at all the excuses that we had earlier on, quite often when our customers telling it, right, is what we found was our success ratios were what they were. But by putting these things together, and in particular bringing in the analytics and tender analysis, business intelligence, we're able to build some successful tools that enable us to not only look at what we do in a far quicker way, but we're able to improve our success rates over tenfold. And that meant we came from a very low start. But what it meant was we could really focus in on what we were good at. We could use the data to predict and look at where our sort of a core driver lane should be. And we became a little bit like fishermen. Instead of just going out and hiding behind a bush and hunting for whatever runs your way, we know now much clearly what type of business we ought to be targeting, where we're more cost effective, and also, you know, where we should be focusing on. What we've been able to do is build a tool which initially started in a very small scale within my own team, just to look at the RFQs and bids that we work on. And what we're then able to do was create a global platform, which enables us now to share this data with each of our region teams as well, to do their own level of analytics and you know, intelligence into how they're doing their RFQs. So very quickly, we can upload an RFQ from standardized templates, compare that against all previous RFQs that we've done, market data, looking at where we're too high against cost, too low against the market, or too high against the market, and really try to hone in. And equally, we can set very special rates up and hone in the big areas, particularly for the bids that we want to win. So how do I summarize really what we've been doing? Well, AI and HI working side by side. Now, I'm a sales guy. I know nothing about data, big data. I do know something about human intelligence, I hope, but I have hired fantastically good people. And one of the best hires that I've been able to achieve to improve my sales results is hire somebody from an analytics background and somebody who helped interpret what we all know is very simple things. I mean, nothing I've talked about is rocket science, but what we've been able to do is find back doors into data sources, utilize good data from the market, and create something that we can really use that helps us improve our success rates. And again, you know, by pulling this sort of data in now and having this global database of information, we can kill a lot of the guesswork. We can almost predict our success levels. We can almost predict what countries and regions are going to be coming up with in RFQs, right? And we can also predict where we're going to be too expensive and where we need to put the effort and time into the RFQs, and spend our time focusing on the 20% that's really going to change the bid rather than the 80% where we were before. So how do we, you know, that allows us to learn from all our pasts. And one of the key real issues is pre-COVID and post-COVID as well, because when we look at these sort of timelines, everybody knew what they knew before COVID. Everyone knew what they were expecting to see or expecting to go to the market. But what we've all seen is that the rates have been so volatile, changing weekly, massive shifts. How do we keep on top of that, right? So in a very, very quick time, by having this history of what we've got out there, and again, outside platforms, we've been able to then build a new sort of post-COVID rates in a weekly basis that allow us to keep track of what our market's doing. We take feedback as well worldwide into a central database so that we've always got the latest and greatest rates that we've been given from countries, shipping lines or whoever. And so we've been able to adjust to a post-COVID situation with validity for a week, 2 weeks, month, etc., so that we can stay on top of that market. Now, if we'd never made this investment in time and effort 6 months ago, we'd be in a very different space today. So, I think this, first of all, analytics in the sales team, absolutely crucial. And most importantly for us, our increasing of our success rate was several-fold, right? We didn't even buy better, although that's been another initiative that we've been working on with our procurement teams, giving them this data that allows them to sort of go to market better. But we're just being armed with better and more relevant and better, certainly better informed information when we go to bid. And by applying that, yes, we still need the sales skills. Yes, we should be investing more in our sales teams, right? But it has allowed us, without having to do that in the first place, have a major jump and leap forward in what for me was a relatively small sales team. And now as we progress this into worldwide, we stop having to worry about we need to hire 10 times more salespeople to improve our sales by tenfold. We can do this in a much smarter way. So I did put a couple of polls on this for everybody, just a bit of fun. I wanted to sort of try to understand how effective your sales team are, and are they performing to the best of their ability. Again, it's all very subjective because we hear a lot of complaints that yes they are, no they're not. And then finally, it would be interesting to see whether some of these basic steps that I've talked about will be able to help you in trying to improve your own ratios. So they're just a bit of fun if you want to do some of that polling. And then finally, I'm just going to throw it open to any questions and answers from anybody. So I'm just reading, big data sounds like only corporates can work on that. How can smaller companies benefit from that? What tools should they use to increase sales with big data? From Peter. So Peter, really, really good question. I'm glad you answered that. Now, if I tell you that we've created a global database which has enabled us to do what I've just showed you, and you saw some of the screenshots that allow us to analyze RFQs in real time. We've done that on a budget of less than $1,000 US, okay? And 2/3 of that was made up by buying 2 copies of Microsoft 365. I think you'd be quite pleased. So it started off with Excel, right? And it started off with us getting Excel, and of course, having the right talent in place to be able to sort of do this. But we certainly had to move outside of Excel quite quickly, as the amount of data, I mean, just on our ocean data alone, we're analyzing over 1 million lines of data every month for that. But what we were able to then start doing is using Power BI. It's fully integrated in Microsoft, and it's not a plug for them. We did look at other sort of tools. But as it's fully integrated, we're using the backbone of Excel, and using Power BI as the application or the front end of that tool to allow us to be able to use this data more effectively. And I think Richard one also said, can these analytics be done in an Excel sheet? And the answer, absolutely. That was exactly how we started. In fact, most of our general output comes out in Excel, although we only sort of try to put what's relevant. But Power BI certainly helps us make sense of that and allows us to give a bit of flexibility for uploading, give global visibility as well around to our tender teams worldwide, and allows us to really be completely in control of what we see. We haven't bought a package off the shelf which gives you finite data. We've been able to, if I just talk about the pre or post-COVID rates, we've been able to adapt that extremely quickly and then add additional sort of reporting fields and analysis fields to suit, right? And we can literally do that within a couple of hours of having the idea and creating it, and then seeing in a live environment how that works. So Angelica, she also asked if it's a good day. Maybe it's a good idea to invest in an application which can help us analyze all needed data. Power BI is the tool that we use for that data, but I think there's also that point about understanding what my talk was really about is what parts of the data are really relevant that you need to analyze, right? Because there is a lot of noise in terms of the data, and how do we get really back down to basics, right? And try to work out what influences those numbers so that you can analyze that in a really effective way. And so on my side, I'm looking at 3 core objectives: cost, market price, and selling price. Okay.
And Mark, the results of your polls have come in. It looks like 100% of the votes say that they're. You're still have the second poll? Yeah, 50%.
Sorry, yes, I've just done. Wow. Okay. So that's so it's a bit like the transfer window for football. Somebody needs to buy either a Lionel Messi, who has become available, or the next point is, let's start looking at these fundamentals. I like to think our salespeople are very effective, and of course, we have to work on that as well, right? If we're not investing in our people, then we can't just rely on big data. But I think if you can do both, this gives us a turbo boost sometimes to help us. And I think the other interesting factor for me for sales teams is that once they start to get a feel of better success levels, it improves confidence, and improves, I guess, our go-to-market with the sales team. So it keeps their heads lifted and interested in more opportunities.
Okay, great.
So somebody's got a very good sales team there at 90% plus effective. So I'm happy that on that one.
So do you think that every sales team should have a data analyst involved?
On a personal note, yes. Now they could be cross-functional. They don't always have to be purely dedicated to sales, depending on the size of the organization. But I find with mine, not only are we able to do things like these type of reporting, develop the tools for the tender teams, we've also been able to sort of integrate things like RPA into our KPI reporting, so we can take a lot of mundane results around from control towers, really help a whole team eliminate a lot of manual tasks in that. So I mean, it's quite interesting. I came to a similar event a few years ago, and I started seeing some of the bright individuals involved in digitization in supply chain, and I thought I really have to make a change. I was really impressed by a lot of the guys that you kind of meet on these type of events, and made it a real clear, conscious effort to go and find somebody like that. Not just a database guy or a computer guy, but somebody who's really into analytics. So it's been a fantastic move.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, let's see if we've got any more questions coming up here. Okay. Make sure you guys leave your questions in the chat for Mark. Okay, so when did you with Nippon Express start to implement all of this data analysis venture? When did you get your sales data man?
Yeah, so I started just over 3 years ago, and part of it was to create a new organization, right? And part of the thing I wanted to do was always, when you start in a new company, is try to work out what's working and what's not working. And one of the things I found that wasn't working was our pricing was too high. Now, equally our quality is very high as well, I have to say that. But there's always a balance between how much quality is worth or what the delta between a competitive price and the quality element is worth. So I had to look at what were some of the biggest issues that we could address, and this was one of them for me. It was about pricing, understanding the market price as well, and how did I make sense of that? So when I put the business proposal together, one of I think my fourth hire was actually an analytics guy, because I realized we needed to get an understanding. And again, it's not rocket science, but it's a bit like looking at RFQs and understanding what went right, what went wrong. So it started off with this Excel sheet. Started off with looking at past bids, looking at, trying to analyze where we went right, where we went wrong, and then we're able to use the Netta at a later point to give us that third additional point, and we did use others as well. And it's not just a purely there, but it gave us a validity onto what we were seeing, how far out were we, talk to product and everybody else. But as our sales team started to become more successful, we're able to improve and improve. And I would say probably towards the end of last year, we looked at Power BI as a solution. And then things really developed so quickly and so fast in that time that back in July, globally, they announced that this is now the global analytics tool that we'll go to the whole world with. And my team also is the global tender team now as well. So by using those tools in conjunction and being written for the people, by the people, the people that are using it, was really important, because we could actually put our input in, know exactly what we wanted to get out of it. Right? And hence, that's where we are today, where the data is really, really usable.
All right, brilliant. That's the beauty of digitalization, right? Just 3 years.
From vision, or from finding out we had issues to where we are now. And we really, every time we look at this tool and every time we use it, we find more and more things that we can do, and how it's going to be, use it better and better. So, I would say for anybody that's still undecided, just get started. Right? But, you still need, I guess, our experience working with these guys who are really, really smart, but we have to work hand in hand and try to automate as much of a life experience as we can into these tools. So HI and AI working together.
All right, great, wonderful. And nice that you mentioned Zanetta. They'll also be speaking later on in the day. So for those of you watching, you can catch their session as well. And yeah, thanks a lot, Marc. Thanks for the presentation. We've got a lot of thank yous in the chat coming through. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions going on as well today.
I do. Thank you very much, everybody, and some good questions. So thank you.